Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I rank the worst insert card designs of 1994. This is a list that is obviously going to be including quite a few Fleer cards in the list of the 5 worst, only it's not exactly the 5 worst, because at number 5 I actually have a tie. There were 2 cards that had to make it onto the list of 5, so I have 6 cards in the list of the 5 worst cards. But I do still have a couple of honorable mentions. And the first card I wanted to start off with is the Score Football Dream Team cards. This is a card that is not... I really don't get why Score shifted over to making their Dream Team cards with holograms, because the holograms really aren't very good. The issue here is that the cards have a very simplistic approach to it. These cards are very much like the Arena holograms, but that was way back in 1991. Upper Deck was still trying to figure out how to make decent holograms at that time, and now, by 1994, Upper Deck was making great holograms, and with these, they're not. But at least in the case of the football cards, there's an interest to them. The first thing that grabs my attention is the fact that when you normally see one of these cards, you can't really see it. The holograms don't read as well as Upper Deck cards do. And so it's a card where you gotta go and explore it and figure out what in the world's going on. And once you do, there are a couple of things going on, specifically 3. You have the portrait of the player, but behind the portrait, you have a whole field of logos of the team. And then over on the other side, you have the dual images going on. And so when you look at the card, you explore that, and you go, oh yeah, there are a bunch of things to look at, and then you're done, and there's nothing to hold your interest, because the hologram doesn't really work well. The colors don't read very well. There's nothing that is really compelling about this card in pretty much any way, but at least it does get you interested, and that's the one strength that this card has. Which, well, hockey is not the same thing, but we'll be getting to that. I also want to talk about the action-packed fantasy forecast cards. And these cards are, well, this is interesting because they were my pick for the worst football card designs, or for worst football inserts of 1994. And here we are right at the beginning of this whole list, and I'm getting this one out of the way. But it is pretty indicative of the difference of, football thankfully was not a terrible area for inserts. This is as bad as it got. The cards, the issue here is the fact that there's almost no design to it, and the design that is on the card is that black football up at the top corner that is a color changing feature that turns into a fantasy forecast number. Most of the time it's just a black dot up there, but that in and of itself isn't that bad. When I first collected these cards, I collected the complete set, or put together the complete set, and so when you look at multiple cards, that dot is the one thing that runs between all the cards, and so it stands out a lot more distinctly. It looks like there's something missing, like you're supposed to have a number in the black dot, not that it disappears and reveals something else. And so for me, I've always disliked this card simply because it looks like they ruined a good image. But when I was working on this series of videos, that's when I really looked at the cards and realized that, well, actually it is a good image. It's a really, really good image. Not everyone, but for the most part, these images are really strong on an individual basis. And that's a big statement, because when I look at all of these cards, each one of the cards in this list, all 10, this is the card that I like looking at this card more than any others. Even though I think that the Dream Team cards are a little bit better because there is an interest to them, this is the card that has the greatest eye appeal, and that's a big thing that is very much lacking as we move on. Because when I move on to the next card, there's a pretty big jump to the Fleer Baseball Smoke and Heat cards. And the problem with these cards is, well, it's twofold. It is the chrome finish, which right away has me out. And then the particular color of the metallic look of the background is pretty lousy. It doesn't work well with the text. It makes the text look lackluster and this is a card that doesn't work overall, except if you take away the chrome and you improve the color, the background actually can work really well. When I look at this card, I go, I wonder what it could have been. Basically, there are two different things that are going on. There's the chrome surface with the metallic bronze color, which if that was used in another way, it could work. And then you have the smoke and heat background, and if you had done that in a different way, it could work. It's like they took two cards or two designs, mashed them together, and ruined both of them. That's the way this card comes across to me. It does, but again, it does have good potential, and that's the one thing about this card that I like, and the reason that I have it out here in the honorable mentions. And then there is the last honorable mention, which is Sportflix, specifically the movers and shakers. The issue here is that this is kind of like with the action pack cards, where it has strong images. Not great, but strong images. And then there's a design that gets in the way, and the design is bold, it's overpowering, it's cartoony, it's like it's designed for kids, which is a dumb thing to say because these are sports cards. They're supposed to be for kids, specifically with Sportflix. That's very much a thing that's supposed to be for kids. But if you design something for kids, normally you do an overly designed card. In this case, it's under-designed. It's more minimalist, but the feature on it is still overdone in its underdone manner. So this is a card that is, the way that it's laid out is supposed to be for more mature audiences, and yet the card is screaming out for kids. So it's a mess of two things running together and neither one doing any good. But I can't hate the card, in large part because the images do tend to be strong enough that kind of carries me. Everything else, no, is just a failure. And like I said, there is a tie for the fifth worst. And I'm starting off with Score Dream Team, and here's the hockey one. And this gives a really good idea of the problem with the hockey cards, which is that you can't really read what's going on all that well. When you do read it, there is, the background behind the player comes through strong enough that you can pay attention to it, but the faded background or the faded border around the background does not help at all. It's a weird mess of things where neither of them work very well. The logo for Dream Team on the front isn't interesting at all. And so when I look at the card, I just go, seriously, this is it? This is the best you can come up with? That's the issue. And then there is a portrait that just kind of pops up over the part of the background, which is, it's a dumb idea. I mean, Sportflix did that in their rookie traded cards, but in that case, it actually kind of worked. Here, it's like they looked at it and went, there's something wrong. You know what we're going to do? We're going to just kind of add something. This card needs something strong, something distinctive about the card. And if it had that, it could actually potentially work. But it's almost like it's nervous about going too strong into whatever it might go into. And so it's like they're backing it off a little bit. And yeah, again, this is a card where I just look at it and I just go, why in the world did they bother? This one very much so. Now, I needed to make sure that was on the list of the 5 worst, but I also needed to make sure that the Fleer Basketball Rookie Sensations cards were here too, because this is a card that probably, I mean, I could totally understand if this was further along on the list, and I think most people probably would want it to be there, which it definitely would fit. That big splat behind is just terrible. It is a comic book-like idea, and I'll give it credit that in certain circumstances with certain colors, it is very bold. Screams out in the display case, look at me. But then once you do look at it, there's nothing about the card that feels professional, well-crafted, interesting. It has none of that. When I look at the card, I go, oh, that's like probably classic, something like that. And then I'm shocked to find there are NBA logos on this card, and I go, wait, so that's like a professional card? It truly feels like it is some cheap off-brand card. It doesn't feel like a professional card. It does have some things going for it that has some potential for something more. But here's the thing. The reason I have this at number 4 or number 5, even though it's a tie, the reason I have it here is because it doesn't really bother me. It disappoints me, but it doesn't bother me. The others all bother me. For instance, at number 4, I have what I consider to be the worst hockey card with the Fleer Netminders cards. And this is one that, at least for the people on the poll, they definitely do not think this is the worst, anywhere close to the worst insert design of 1994. But for me, for hockey, this is the one that drives me nuts the most. There are two big things going on. One is that cross pattern of the text behind it has a congested quality to it, where I don't really feel that there's a structured order like a pattern. It just doesn't come across that way. But the bigger issue is that it has, especially with the Dominic Hasek card, I think it's the background that is just slightly ghosted in over this single color. And you'll notice that with the Hasek card, it looks like there's a stain on the top of the card and then drooping down from it. So this is an unusually bad card in this card set, but still with all the cards, the background, look, either say it's all one color or really bring out the background so you can tell it's the background, because this card looks like it was pulled out of a dumpster. And not like up on the top of the dumpster, it's like it was down in a little ways and it has interacted with fellow items in the dumpster. That's what it feels like. It feels dirty and grungy, and I really do get frustrated with these cards. But it doesn't bother me quite as much as the Ultra Basketball All-Rookie Team cards. And this amazes me. Every single time I look at it, I just go, how in the world is that a completed card? There are two parts to the card. There is the picture and there is the silver foil. And yeah, there's the little thing in between with the picture peeling up or whatever they were doing, but it's all about that big field of silver foil, which is completely unadorned. You got to do something with it. Come on, put a little bit of color on it for, whether it's a print color or some gold foil, something. Just break that up. But then over on the other side, you have an almost completely unadorned image. And the thing is, when I look at this card, I always think it has to be off-cut. There has to be something on the other side, or there has to be some element added on top of the picture to add some interest. Because if you just go, there's just an image, and then on the other side, there's just some foil, that's the kind of thing that amateurs do to just kind of create a card. I do at least like the fact that there's relief. That is the one thing going for it, but you got to do more with it. If you're doing two things that are just purely simplistic, there's nothing to endear the card to the audience, and that's the real failure here with this card. Now, a great example of this is that at number 2, I have the Fleer Basketball Provision cards, where they don't even have the two elements. It's just the image, literally it says Fleer on it. Great. And the player name, wonderful. But it's all about that art, and the art does not work. So at least the images on the all-rookie team have their own strength, even though they're overpowered by the silver foil. So that's okay for there. Here they just say, you know what, we're just going with the art. And the art is really terrible. So whenever I look at the card, I just go, why in the world do I care to collect it? Kind of like with the Netminders. Now, I do have this whole basketball set because I finished almost all of the insert sets for Fleer in 1994 out of boxes, so this naturally just kind of formed. But it's not a Provision set that I look at, like literally ever, because I just don't like looking at it. And so when you have a card that's all about the image, like with Action Packed, make it have a good image. Action Packed succeeded at that. Here, I go, what a waste. And that's really what it comes down to. But the reason I don't have it at number 1 is because it doesn't quite bug me enough. Whereas over in baseball with the Leaf Gamers cards, this one does bug me enough. This one really bugs me. Again, the card is mostly an image, and these images are boring. They're just straight up across the table boring. Every time I look at it, I go, really? That's what you came up with? Because that's what they came up with. It was not good images, but then they have that plate, that blocks of foil. And when you look at the Ultra All Rookie Team cards, at least they have strong embossing so you can read everything clearly. So when you look at the foil, once you get the light right, you go, oh yeah, there's something there. That's good. With the gamers, you literally can't even read it. When I was doing the video just for baseball, I spent nearly 30 seconds trying to read the card. I almost had to go to the Beckett to find out what in the world the name of the insert set was, because you can't read it on the card. So you have an underwhelming image, but then you have that box that doesn't fit anything, into the card in any way, and you can't read it. You can't. Which is why is it there? And so every time I look at the card, I just go, this is stupid. It reminds me of the Don Russ hockey cards for the same year, which just look terrible. Here, it's even worse because you can't read it. If you're going to put a plaque there, do something with it. Otherwise, it's just a box that takes up space, and that's really what it comes down to. So to me, that's the worst insert card for 1996 or for 1994. So let me know in the comments below your take on this, how you think things should be shifted around. If you think that something should be added onto here, definitely let me know. And be interesting to hear what you guys have to say about it. Tomorrow I will be doing the poll for all of this, so you can, or not for all of this, but for the 4 worst. So you can look at that, although it won't be the list of the 4 worst from this list. It'll be the worst for each of the 4 sports as the polls have come through. So definitely check that out. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I do urge you to do so, and thank you very much for watching.